Moving on to 3A. And the hot or cold question there, it was another tough one because you had, a team that was in the state finals last season moving up a class, so trying to figure out who's going to stand atop that summit coming into the season. And the hot or cold question is, West Lafayette is the 3A favorite. Because they did finish as the number one team in 3A last season prior to the tournament. And for me, that's actually a hot take. They're top 10 in the state in points per game. They were the fifth best defense. They had the fifth best defensive average. They're top 5 in terms of margin of victory, and they have lots of returning players. They have quarterback Max Mullis, who had 1,700 yards, which was 11th in 3A, 29 touchdowns. He had 500 yards rushing as well. They returned their leading rusher, Connor Blankman. He had 660 yards and 9 touchdowns. Matthew Richardson, who was key on that defense, he's back. He had 50 tackles and 3 sacks last season. So they've got a lot of talent coming back, and they were the number one team. And so I think that's why they're going to be kind of the team to beat and have that target on their back heading into the season.
Yeah, this is definitely a hot take. To me, it's really funny how West Lafayette has all of a sudden turned into this football factory here as of late. You kind of thought, oh yeah, they got lucky when they had George and Yanni Karloftis, but then it's like it just kept continuing, and I mean, it's great. What's funny is, like, I remember walking by this very small school, unassuming school, all the time when heading to friends' houses when I was at Purdue, and you just all of a sudden, boom, there's West Lafayette High School. Oh hi, there you are. But when people say it's literally a stone's throw away, they're not lying. But yeah, I mean, it's fun to see this small school that kind of gets overlooked in the landscape of the Lafayette community, and how they've really become a legitimate football factory. So yeah, I think it is a hot take that they are the favorite. They're turning out some of the best talent in the state of Indiana year in and year out here as of late.
And looking at the toughest sectional in 3A, once you get down to 3A, the disbursement of talent kind of gets a little bit, further apart. I mean, we, for the top 4 or the top 3 classes, 6A to 4A, you might have, a sectional. Heck, we just talked about one in 4A where you have 3 potential state finals contenders in one sectional. So you don't have that as much as you go lower down. But I'm going to go with sectional 30. You've got state champ Gibson Southern from last season. You've got Mount Vernon Posey, who finished as the number 9 team last season in the class. You've got Owens Valley, who was the top 12 team in the class last season. So even if these may not necessarily be the best teams in the class, I think it's going to be a very tightly contested sectional.
Yeah, I'm actually going one sectional prior to you. Oh gosh, where is it? I hate when I lose the number. I'm going with sectional 29. It consists of Crawfordsville, Danville Community, Monrovia, North Montgomery, Speedway, Tri-West, Hendricks, and Western Boone, otherwise known as Webo. That one just got some history in it. I think like Danville and Monrovia can put up a fight. I mean, Tri-West looks really good this year, and you can never discount Webo. I mean, how many state titles do they have? How many state title appearances do they have? I mean, when you think of Indiana high school football historically, Western Boone pops into mind, Ben Davis, Carmel, Sheridan, schools like that just always seem to come to the forefront of your mind. So anytime you have a program that is known historically, it's always a fun one to watch, whether they're on a down year or not. You always know you're going to get something exciting out of one of those schools. So I'm keeping an eye on sectional 29 because of Western Boone and Tri-West being both in that sectional.
Well, I remember the first year I covered, just one team for Indiana SRN. It was Park Tudor, and their their sectional championship game was against Webo. And I remember going into it thinking like, oh, maybe Park Tudor's got there. Maybe we can have a chance. I think it ended up being like 45-12 or something like that. The Webo won. Like Webo just ran away with it. They're such a good team. But I'm glad you mentioned Tri-West Hendricks, because that's where I'm going for my player to watch. Because their quarterback, Ty Owens, I mean, last season, fifth most yards in 3A. He had nearly 2,500 yards, 2,479. He had 2,200, nearly 2,300 yards passing, fourth in the class behind some pretty talented names, Brady Allen and Nolan Buckman, as well as Garrett Yoon. So he's the only 2,000-plus yard passer returning to 3A. He's also a top 10 passer in the state. He led the Bruins to their first double-digit win season since 2014, the year they won state. So Ty Owens is primed for a fantastic season at the 3A level.
So the player that I'm looking at is Matthew Richardson of West Lafayette. You mentioned it earlier. Last year, he was a key player on that defense with 50 tackles and 3 sacks. He was playing alongside Mo Omuwade. I think that's how you pronounce his last name, who's now on to Purdue, who is easily making the 3 deeps, apparently, as a guy that doesn't have very much football experience, but he's a very powerful player. So when you were playing alongside somebody of that caliber, sometimes all the attention gets put onto them, and now the attention is going to be placed on you. How can you perform when you are that guy that offensive lines are keying on and blocking the hardest? Are you going to be able to keep those numbers consistent from last year? Are you able to grow on those numbers and continue to be a leader for your team? That's going to be something I'm going to keep my eye on with him. I feel like that defense, that team will go as far as their defense can take them, and they're usually pretty good defensively. They usually have a defensive stud. So I'm looking at Matthew Richardson to be that guy that steps up and really helps carry that defense next year or this coming year.
So as we wrap up the Class 3A, dark horse and state champion, my dark horse is going to be Tri-West. In addition to Ty Owens, they do return their leading rusher and Devin Brown, who was close to 1,000 yards. They have Jeff Marsh back, who is third on the team in receiving. They have some key pieces of a defense that was knocking on the door of being top 50 in the state. But we've talked about them a lot in this 3A discussion. My state champion is West Lafayette for a lot of the reasons I mentioned earlier. Top 10 team in the state. On all sides of the ball, statistically, they returned Max Moles and a slew of players that were key to the number 1 ranking last season, and they lost to Brebeuf in the sectional, which can't happen this year. So I got West Lafayette hoisting the trophy the new year at Lucas Oil Stadium.
So my dark horse team, I don't really have a reason other than they're due. It seems like they just haven't been at the same level as of late, but they've been there before. I'm looking at Indianapolis Bishop Chittard. I hate to say Indianapolis in front of it. It's Chittard. Come on, it's Chittard. That's how everybody knows them. So I'm looking at Chittard as my dark horse just because I don't really have a good read on a lot of these other teams, and I want to be different than you. So, and Chittard, I could have gone Weibo, but they kind of have seemed to be down here the past couple of years as well. Chittard, being a private school, can technically draw in talent. Allegedly, it's a gray area. You can send information as to why somebody should come to Chittard to anybody. So, just saying. And Chittard does. So Chittard plays in a conference that is also playing schools that are up in 4A. Just so you are aware, it's the Indiana Crossroads Conference. Is it the Crossroads Conference? I forget what it's called, but it consists of a lot of the Catholic schools within the Indianapolis Metro, excluding Cathedral. So like Brebeuf, Roncalli, Guerin Catholic. Schools like that. So they do play some teams that are up in class. So that always kind of helps prepare you a little bit more for the road through sectionals, regionals, and all that. So I'm looking at Chittard as my dark horse. Yeah, and my pick is West Lafayette as well. They're number 1 for a reason. Preseason, they're good. They like I said, they've turned themselves into a football powerhouse. So I can't wait to see this team, how they can live up to that expectation because, I mean, they're going to be hungry. This is going to be a very hungry team after getting beaten in the sectional championship last year to Brebeuf. I mean, we all thought, okay, when you look at that sectional championship last year, the winner of that was going to state. And that was the case. The winner of that went to state and had a date with Gibson Southern. So they have something to prove because they were really good last year and they're going to be really good again this year.